The morning sun hardly managed to reach the steel and glass jungle of New York when Daniel Wilson pulled on his well-worn work boots for the 100th time. The laces were frayed, and the soles were worn, but they were all he had. Daniel lived in a small walk-up in Queens, where the roof leaked constantly, and the landlord didn't care. Every morning he took the crowded subway to the city, where suited executives barely acknowledged his existence as they passed through the lobby. Daniel was 32 years old. He was a construction worker, to be more precise, and in 8 months he had served on Sterling's renovation crew. He was no ordinary laborer. He had a good understanding of hydraulics and was familiar with all kinds of engineering, which meant he could fix almost anything. At least that was how he saw himself. In a place where millionaires' homes were a common sight, he was just an invisible cog in the machine. His foreman gave him a simple order that morning. "Fix the leak in the penthouse," he said. "It seems to be located in the bathroom." Daniel had heard the name Victoria Sterling, the woman who owned the penthouse and half of Manhattan's high-rise buildings. She was a billionaire businesswoman and a notorious gossip magazine staple. However, her name meant nothing to Daniel. He was just another hired hand to her, and she could barely spare a glance in his direction. Daniel took the express elevator to the 85th floor and was met with yet another astronomy-defying view of the city. The mansion's interior was breathtaking. Big fluffy chairs, lots of marble, crystal chandeliers that must have cost a small fortune. Daniel barely had enough time to take it all in before he headed to the bathroom to inspect the leak. It had apparently been bothering Ms. Sterling for some time, judging by the state of the pipes. As he worked, he saw the woman herself walking past the open door. She wore a white business-style blouse, a floor-length black skirt that stopped just above her knees, and red-bottomed shoes that clicked loudly with every step. Her platinum blonde hair was tied up in a bun, and her diamond bracelet sparkled as she gestured sharply for him to hurry up. "Make it quick," Victoria said, her voice like ice. "I have important guests coming this evening." "Yes, ma'am," replied Daniel, tying the last knot and standing up. He wished he hadn't called her ma'am. Working on other people's homes was one thing, but fixing the billionaire's belongings made him feel especially insignificant. "I trust you to do a good job," Victoria added, giving him a cold look. "This place is very dear to me." She turned around and stormed off, her heels making a dull metallic sound as they hit the floor. Daniel finished up and was just putting his tools back in his belt when Victoria's assistant arrived. She was a young woman with glasses. "Ms. Sterling," the assistant said, "the jeweler called. He couldn't find your diamond bracelet in the bedroom." Daniel turned around and met Victoria's icy stare. "You get me my bracelet," she all but hissed. "I want this place completely secured by tonight. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," replied Daniel, who had no intention of stealing anything. He was just a hired worker, after all. He put away his last screwdriver and turned to leave when Victoria's assistant cleared her throat. "Ma'am, Daniel is only a hired hand. He probably doesn't even know where the bedroom is." "Oh, he knows exactly where it is," said Victoria. Her lips curled into a sneer as she looked at Daniel. "Because he has been there lately." Daniel's jaw dropped. "That's not true." "That's not true," Victoria repeated, her laugh cold. "I believe it is. You have been in my bedroom recently, haven't you?" "No. I swear to God, I've never even been there." "Oh, I think," said Victoria, stepping closer to him. "You have been there because I've been having an extremely close inspection of the walls in that room. She gestured towards the bathroom, and Daniel realized with growing horror that she meant the pipes. And I believe someone has been using them frequently lately. She took another step closer, her face only inches from his. Tell me, employee, where exactly have you been lately? Daniel stood frozen to the spot as Victoria's assistant stared daggers at him. Then he turned around and silently followed her as she stormed out of the penthouse. His heart pounded in his ears, but he had no idea what she was talking about. Victoria led the way to the main construction floor on the 60th floor, where at least 20 workers were busy with various tasks. As soon as she walked in, everyone stopped talking and turned to watch her. Daniel could see the looks of surprise and apprehension on their faces as Victoria pointed a finger right at him. "Are you?" She shrieked. "Come here. Right now." Daniel's legs seemed to have turned to lead as he slowly walked up to her. Some workers gave him sympathetic looks, while others were busy trying to hide their laughter. Then his gaze fell on his best friend, Marcus. He gave a barely perceptible nod, telling Daniel to hold his tongue, but it was too late. Victoria grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and practically lifted him off his feet. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Victoria all but spat. Her manicured fingers dug into his collar as she drew him closer. "You think you can steal from me? You're such a pathetic little nobody." She stared furiously into his face. "Do you know who I am?" "No, ma'am," said Daniel meekly. "I swear to God, I never stole anything from you." His voice trembled as he realized the full gravity of the situation. He was about to be fired, maybe even arrested. "Shut up," Victoria snapped. "Do you think I'm stupid? That I can be fooled by my own workers? Do you know who I am?" She looked stunning in her white designer blouse and black pencil skirt, but her words were cutting like a knife. "No, ma'am," Daniel said again, wriggling uncomfortably in her grip. "Please, Ms. Sterling, I swear to you, I had nothing to do with your bracelet." "You're wasting my time," Victoria said. "Get your cheap little self out of my sight." She looked him up and down disdainfully. "I can't stand this anymore. Look at this nobody. Look at him." She turned to the other workers, her voice rising with every word. "This miserable little thief thinks he can steal from me and get away with it." She turned back to Daniel, her face twisted in fury. "Do you know what I'm going to do to you?" she demanded furiously. "I'm going to make sure no one ever hires you again." Daniel stood motionless as the workers turned to stare at him. A few even looked away in shame. Then Marcus took a step forward, but one of the floor supervisors stopped him. No one dared to say anything in Daniel's defense, because no one knew what really happened. "Security," Victoria cried triumphantly. "Call the police. I want this man arrested." People inquired about his well-being, but he looked down, not responding. The truth was, he never stole anything from Ms. Sterling, but he was humiliated nonetheless. He pulled his torn shirt over his head and slowly walked out of the building. It was a cold morning in New York City, and the wind blew right through his tattered clothes. However, the humiliation was far worse than the cold. As he walked down the street, dozens of passers-by stared at him. Some looked away in shame, while a few even laughed at him. Daniel looked down at his shirt and the red marks on his palms. He had worked so hard to get this far in life, to earn a decent living, but one lie from Victoria was enough to destroy everything. Tears of frustration blurred his vision as he made his way to Queens. When he finally got to his tiny walk-up, he locked the door behind him and slid down the wall onto the floor with his back against it. He looked up at the small cracked mirror on the opposite wall and suddenly realized that not everything was lost after all. Daniel's heart was heavy as he walked into his cramped Queen's walk-up. He stared numbly at the chipped paint on the walls as he slowly sank to the floor with his back against the opposite wall. He looked up at the small cracked mirror on the opposite wall and suddenly realized that not everything was lost after all. As he was looking at his reflection, he saw something strange through the glass. Daniel turned around and looked at the camera on the bathroom counter. A few days ago, he had set up a little security system of his own in case any of the workers tried to rob him. He had a cheap digital camera that could record videos, and he used it to film all the suspicious-looking activity in the bathrooms. He never thought he would need it, but apparently it was just the right time. The camera had captured everything from the moment he walked into the bathroom to the moment he had found the thief stealing Victoria's bracelet. Daniel shakily pulled out his old laptop and inserted the memory card. He opened the file and found that the camera had indeed recorded everything. Daniel looked at the screen, a mixture of emotions waging war within him. He watched as his younger self entered the bathroom and bent down to inspect the leaky pipe. He saw his hands pulling the screwdriver and wrench from his belt as he got to work. After a few minutes, he stopped, looked around, and carefully packed his tools back. He stood up and walked out of the bathroom when the camera's view landed on the opposite room. To his surprise, it showed Victoria's bedroom, where the woman herself was arguing with one of her assistants. Daniel looked at the screen again, confused. It was the room where the supposed theft had taken place, but what he saw next made his blood run cold. Instead of Victoria accusing him of stealing, the camera clearly showed that her assistant was giving her a thick envelope of cash. "That's not what happened," Daniel muttered under his breath. He leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding in his ears. Daniel's voice shook with anger as he continued watching the footage. The security camera recorded every detail with frightening clarity: how the city official handed Victoria the envelope with money, how she smiled and tucked it into her desk drawer, and then it showed the angry man storming out of the room and right into Daniel, who was arguing with his assistant. "Wait, that's not," Daniel gasped as the camera's view landed on him. He looked up to see his own face in the mirror. His eyes were wide with surprise as he saw his torn shirt. "I know it wasn't me," he whispered hoarsely. "But what are they going to do to me now?" Daniel looked up at the ceiling and then at the small window, letting out a long sigh. He looked down at the shirt that had been torn from his back and suddenly realized that it wasn't over yet. Daniel turned off the laptop and slowly stood up. He stared at the small window and the street beyond it for a long time. Daniel knew he had to do something. He had to find a way to clear his name. He would never be able to look anyone in the eye if he didn't. He looked down at his hands and then at his torn shirt. This was the last straw. He was done with being treated like this. He would take this to the press and show the whole world what was really happening. The billionaire's life was being ruined, and Daniel knew it would be hard, but he would do it. He would restore his honor, and maybe, just maybe, he would finally be able to pay off his debts and live a better life. "Marcus," he said quietly to himself, "I need your help." This was a difficult moment for him, but it would all be worth it in the end. He would clear his name and bring down those who had wronged him.